Hello, welcome back to In Between Homes. Today, my guest is Madhav. Madhav is a Franco-Indian entrepreneur living in New Delhi. He has lived, studied, and worked in many countries like Philippines, USA, France, and India for the last 20 years. And after quitting 15 years of a corporate career, he decided to go for something that is more aligned to his value and his talent. So today we are going to discover his story and the resilience and his journey. So welcome to Madhav. Hello, Madhav.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here
Yes. So
today.
tell us a little bit more. Where is home for you?
Home, actually, until a while back, it was a complicated question because I feel very much at home in France. But since the past 2 3 years, New Delhi has been home for me. So I was born in Delhi. I spent the first 9 years of my life in New Delhi, and then the next 9 years in the Philippines. So I've been around. I've spent a lot of time in several countries, as you mentioned from when you introduced me. But as of now, New Delhi is home.
And how does it feel to be home?
Well, I think home is something that you have to keep working at and constructing in a sense. Yeah. So uh, I when I moved back from France in 2008, 2007, 2008, I didn't feel like Delhi was home because I didn't know the city. I wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't have a real connection to the city or people over here. And it took me several years to build up that connection, whether it's professional, personal, social, cultural. And I think once I did that, at this point now, I feel that this is home. But at the same time, I increasingly feel that home is where you have a certain connection with people or culture. So even France, for that matter, I have a lot of friends, a lot of family in France. And when I think of traveling today to different countries, it's not so much just to see the countries or see the place, but it's to visit people. So for me, again, once again, home is more a sense of connection with people and work.
And how has been for you, and maybe you have some advice for the listeners, to build this connection with people abroad in a foreign environment, even though New Delhi was where you grew up, where you were born. How is it to connect with people abroad in a different culture?
Well, I think you have to realize, I mean, you have to the easiest way is to, of course, make friends either through your work or through your interests. So, I mean, making friends through your interests is something that has helped me a lot. I've been part of a choir and orchestra. I'm very much into music. So wherever I've been, whether it's been France or Delhi, it's been trying to, build a little community around my interests. If a couple of years ago, I started to learn salsa dancing. So we joined a salsa class and met some more people that way because when in your work you'll meet a specific kind. I mean, you'll meet certain people, but they may not automatically become your friends because that's at least been my experience with working. But I think it's good to kind of go on your interests and identify these other people through shared and common interests, because then they come from different universes, different lives. They're not all corporate professionals. So if you're in a corporate environment and you don't want to always be stuck with meeting people from the same environment, then it's through these interest groups where you can make connections. And I think that makes it more fun.
Yeah, more fun. And I said, trying something new. You were saying about salsa. It's also
Mm,
getting outside of the comfort zone of what is known
of
to
course.
connect with new people. So when you look back at your life 10 years ago and your life today, how was back then? Who was Madhav 10 years ago?
I think the biggest difference was that I didn't have the kind of the clarity of vision for my life back then that I have today. So I mean, I'm 40 years old, but before, in my 20s, in your 20s and early 30s, I mean, we tend not to really think about the future or have a vision of the future, because we're like, hey, get out of university, get a job, work, and somehow life will move on and carry on and develop. But it's when in your 30s, by the time you're in your 30s and you start reaching your 40s, life throws you a couple of curveballs, and things don't always work out in the way you had expected or the way you see for other people working out. And that's when you realize that actually, hey, you need to have some kind of a vision for your life. How do I want to live? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to serve? And what kind of work do I want to do? And how much money do I want? And do I really need? Uh, and once you have that vision, or once you start, putting together that vision, then you have so much more clarity on how you want to live. I think in the maybe 10 years ago, I was more on autopilot. I just went through the motions, went from job to job, and said, okay, this is how life is, without really thinking seriously about the kind of life that not just the kind of life that I wanted, but the kind of life that resonated with my values. And I think that's very important, because when you say know yourself as a person, it's more about knowing your values. And and if you are able to do work, any kind of work, whether it's in a company or corporate environment or not, that is in sync with your values, there I think I mean, you find something very special.
Mm. And for most of people, and myself included, a few years ago, I didn't have a vision. How,
Mm.
when did you know that you needed to clarify that, or it was a need that you need to figure out? Did you have a moment where it was a need and then you act on it?
Yes, in fact, it was forced upon me. So the thing is, if we don't choose for ourselves, then the world chooses for us, in a sense. So I was recently in the last job I had. It started off well, and then circumstances changed in that job, and I was unhappy. I was really unhappy. I didn't really want to be there. And I started questioning, what is it that I really wanted to do? And the natural thing is, if you're in one company and you're not happy, you start looking at other companies. I looked at other companies and I said, hey, I'm still not interested. I'm just doing it for the salary, because of course, I need to earn a living and pay my bills. But that really forced me to question what I wanted to do. Also, because I was 40 years old, I was no longer 20, 25. So I couldn't just keep trying different things. But what I realized for sure was that, having worked in companies for 15 years, that was something I didn't really think was the right place for me, or it wasn't the most optimal, at least not in the companies that I worked with. And I worked in several companies. So in a sense, I was pushed. Life kind of pushed me to that direction, where it forced me to really think about what I wanted to do, because uh, I didn't have too many choices. So thankfully, that those feelings came to the surface. I decided that I mean, I reflected really hard. I went on YouTube. I looked at a lot of videos. I started exploring subjects that I thought were interesting. And from there, slowly, I transitioned from, being an employee to becoming an entrepreneur. And this entrepreneurial journey is still starting, but it happened because there was thankfully a change in my situation at work. If there hadn't been a change in my situation at work and things had been relatively easy, then maybe I would have still just carried on due to inertia, and it wouldn't have pushed me into discovering something new. So I'm very grateful for all the discomfort that I faced at work, because this discomfort is what pushed me, at least, into really seeking out something more suited to my character and my talents.
Mm. Yeah, it's so powerful because you say if it was still easy and comfortable, you probably would
Hmm.
have stayed. And but the environment and something maybe bigger forces kind of make things uncomfortable, that open doors for you to live actually and start this journey of being on your own and entrepreneur. What was
Hmm.
maybe the biggest fear for you from shifting from an employee uh, role into an entrepreneurial role?
Well, of course, the biggest fear for everyone is uncertainty about when you'll start earning or where that revenue will come from. But then, the more you do it, you realize it's actually not a fear, because you think you're taking a risk, but actually, in a way, you're de-risking yourself because if you are in a job and you get fired, your salary stops overnight. Overnight, you stop getting income from one month to the next. But if you are an entrepreneur, if you are running your own business, you have some control over, when that business will taper or when there will be lows and there'll be highs, but your income will never really stop. You'll have more control over your income. And in a sense, the older you get, if you get fired from a job in your 50s, for example, there'll be fewer people who'll hire you. So at first, of course, everyone around me said that, you're taking a risk and you're doing something on your own and you haven't done it before. But I felt I had to do it. I mean, I felt that there was no choice and that this was the right path for me to take. And, you know, um, thanks to the work we did together. I mean, I know you worked with me. I'd engaged you for helping me with financial planning, and I think that is something that really helped because, of course, I knew how much I was spending and earning every month, but because of the exercises that we did, I had a better idea and control over my habits and how I spend and what I spend, and if I want something, where do I compromise? And so, as a result of that, I was able to actually financially plan out my next 2 years. So, and that really helped me take the decision of jumping ship because if you just do it like that, there's a lot more stress if there's no planning. But if there's some amount of planning, if there's some form of a structure, then you can work backwards. Then you can set dates and deadlines, and it's much easier to take that leap when at least you know that, hey, by this date this needs to be done, or I look at plan B. But yeah, otherwise I don't think the fear, of course, was how will I get from here to where I want to go. But I think when you just start and start creating, start selling, start working on your project, more ideas come and more possibilities come. And I think today is a time where we have so much more opportunity. I think a lot more people have opportunity to sell something or teach something to someone else through, you can do this from anywhere, through YouTube, through the internet, or to do consulting. So essentially, there's a lot more choice today. So I think if I'd started maybe 20 years ago, things would have been a lot more difficult. But now because I have been running companies, I've been in different roles, I had much more confidence. So there was a little bit of apprehension at the beginning, but now, I mean, I'm not afraid at all.
Awesome. I think you mentioned a lot of great things where you created your own security, I would say financial security, knowing
Mm.
that actually now your paycheck doesn't depend on something else, willingness to pay you or fire you or hiring you, but more on you taking back your power into that. If it's my own business, I can manage, actually I can plan in advance, I can uh, anticipate or do the right action to actually generate revenue, generate income, share your expertise that you have been
Mhm.
doing for businesses over the 20, 30 years, and all of those expertise as a value on the market that you are able to transform and take on your, I would say, ownership out, and then decided now that you create value from that and you can sell your services to others, and this is creating new financial security. And by deciding as well before transitioning to learn a new skill and to empower yourself with financial planning and shifting habits is something that is so important. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people may think like, oh, it's too late, I'm too old, or it's too, I should have learned that when I was young, or maybe my parents should have taught me how to manage finances. So before we worked together, how did you feel about finances? Do you remember? And how was in your life, I would say, the relationship with numbers?
Well, first, I would say we are never too old to learn anything. So, there are people who start learning piano in their 60s and they're great pianists by the time they're in their 90s. And today we're living longer and longer, and we're more conscious of our health as well. So it's never too late to learn anything. Coming back to your question, I stayed away from finance. I didn't look at numbers. I'm not a numbers guy. I mean, if to use that line. And I never really looked at my bank statements, my credit card statements. Like I said, I had an idea of how much I earned and vaguely how much I spent every month. But the simple, I mean, one of the tasks that we did, or the exercises that we did, was we looked at my credit card statements every single month and bank statements. And from that, uh, we got an idea of not, I mean, I got an idea of not just where I spent my money on, but my behavior. So when I was stressed, I used to order more food. I used to just shop on Amazon, and those transactions went up. So it actually showed me another picture of my life. So, and that made me realize that finances is not something external. It's just another expression of your life and of you. And I think, yeah, so before that's why I reached out to you also, for some help in this, because I also believe that there's a lot of things that we can learn, but sometimes we cannot learn everything ourselves. And it's much easier if we work with someone for a short period of time who shows us the way, and who kind of creates that awareness. So I think it's that awareness about not just finances, but other things in your life. It's just so many of us. I mean, that's the other thing. If I compare myself to 10 years ago, I would say that I had a lot less self-awareness about myself, about life in general, than 10 years ago than I did today. So the financial aspect, becoming aware of finances, and doesn't mean you have to be a financial wizard. It just means you have to know very simply, what are you spending on, what are your priorities, what are you earning from, and make some projections based on that, and that will give you the comfort of making certain decisions. Because finance, again, like any kind of planning, at the end of the day, we're making decisions every day. Should I stay in this job? Should I leave? How should I grow? Should I take a loan from the bank? There are all these questions, very important questions. But the more aware you are of yourself and your situation, the easier it is to take these decisions and then focus your energy on the wonderful project that you want to work on.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so creating the vision, as you mentioned at the beginning, and then making
Mm,
the decision based on awareness, based in totally being aware of who you are in all different aspects of your life to be able to make the right decision
mm,
aligned with this vision. So it's how you have been able to build up more confidence and to do a path that it's new. Like,
mhm,
okay, I'm jumping into the area of entrepreneurial world, and maybe I'm going to face some rejection and some no's
mhm,
and all of that. And you mentioned at the beginning, knowing your values is super important, and how this knowing your value can support you as well in the entrepreneurial world.
mhm. So I think uh, what I share with my clients when I work with them, because I work as a transformation mentor, and I help them when they are going through periods of transformation, or when they're faced with certain critical life decisions, stemming from mainly career decisions, is what is the problem you want to solve, and who do you want to solve it for? And that who can be a kind of client, because in whatever work we do, whether you're a doctor or whether you're an investment banker or whether you're a chartered accountant, and you've got, let's say, 10 clients or 50 clients, you don't like working with all of them. In fact, most of them you probably are okay with just working, but there are few people who you really enjoy working for. So I think it's important to understand what is it about these few people or few clients that, where you have fun? Is it the interaction? Is it something about these people? Is it the quality that they have? What is where is it that you enjoy? And I think if you identify these characteristics, then if you then you know where to grow and where you want to focus increasingly. Because what you also realize as you're getting older is that life is short. Life is short, not just because we're going to die by the time we're in our 80s or 90s, and in another 40 years, 40, 50 years, but also we cannot take our health for granted. And a lot of people in their 30s and 40s are now experiencing health issues, yeah, because we're just unhealthy. We're having processed foods all the time. So these health issues coupled with a sense of mortality makes us think that, hey, okay, as long as I'm here, why don't I have fun, and why don't I focus on doing the kind of work that where I, that brings me joy, and where I think I really create value for other people. So knowing the kind of work you want to do, the kind of problem you want to solve, and for who you want to solve it is, and how you want to grow uh, in that process. I think if you study that, if you examine that in detail, then you'll be better equipped to decide how you want to move forward in your career and in your life in general.
Yeah, those questions are gold. It's really bringing more awareness, as you mentioned before, with
Mm.
finances. Excuse me. Bringing more awareness to what we want, and often, people don't know what they could do if they were creating their own jobs and all of that. But the first is asking yourself those questions, is taking a moment to reflect on, if I had all the choices in the world, who I would love to work with. Because often we just and value ourselves, and we say, like, who would like to buy from us. But the energy and the actually the right action and the right question to ask is, who I would love to serve, what I would
Mm.
love to share with others. And when you do things from that place, everything is easier, and actually the right clients, the right people is coming to you. But if you are in a position where I need to sell my service to every single person that I meet, it's wrong. Like, it doesn't work, because you are not made for everyone, and everyone is not made to work with you. So I think you are giving very great advice to people who are maybe thinking of transitioning out and not knowing exactly yet what they would love to do. And just by offering them those questions to reflect on, I think it's so valuable. And we mention a lot those values and knowing ourselves and reflecting how, you know, life is busy, especially when you are in corporate world. How did you find the time to do those things?
It was tough. It was really tough. And like I said, thanks to your help with financial planning, I I decided I just stopped it, because it was very difficult for me to have the mind space and the time to think of all this. I started thinking of this, of course, maybe a year before I quit, but it's difficult to do that. I mean, in some cases, you just need to quit if you can, if you have the luxury of quitting, and if you have some financial cushion. eh, then you need that minds you need to kind of detoxify or unlearn everything you've done for in the past couple of months. So if you have a full-time job, especially one that's very demanding, then it's very difficult to think of something else, although you can start that process. But I think one important lesson I learned was that I knew, okay, so in my case, I knew that I'd wanted to do something with YouTube. I wanted to create videos. I wanted to talk about maybe wellness and transformation. I didn't know how I would go about doing that. I wasn't sure what angle I would take, because there are people who talk about health, people who talk about finance, people who talk about spiritual growth. So, but I knew I wanted to be in that space. So I already started thinking about that from a while back. And I knew I was a relatively good speaker, and I was genuinely interested in this space of spirituality and wellness and growth since, I mean, for several years. But the only way I started getting clarity was once I quit my job and I started making videos. I started writing. So writing and making videos helped me become more focused. And also taking a few courses from a few people out there. I mean, I identified a couple of people who are experts who I resonated with in this field, who had done similar work, who had a similar journey and similar experience to me. I identified them. I took one or two of their courses. I got a lot more clarity as I went along.
Yes.
So I think it's very hard to have that clarity when you are starting, but that's the fun of the journey, because you know that you want to do something. You have a vague idea of what it is, And even if you don't, but you know that this is something you don't want to do, that your current job is not something you really don't want to do, I think if you can plan ahead and set aside, some buffer, some financial buffer, then I think it's worth that investment. Because at the end of the day, it's not time, it's money. You're investing that money in yourself and in your potential future. And I think it's well worth it if you can identify the right path to follow for you.
Mm. Yeah, I think, yeah, you mentioned very well that it's a journey of clarity first. It's like
Hmm.
going on, taking a boat and exploring, and really like you don't have, and most of people don't have it all figured out from day
Mm.
one. And it's really a journey, and step by step. You mentioned you started kind of investigating more like a year prior to the decision. So
Mm.
it's not something you do overnight, because you have a certain life and a family and all of that. So you cannot just disappear from your current life and create a new one. Some people can, I guess, but if you want to do a soft exit and a right transition to put all the ball on your side, meaning that you want to have the right amount of security
Hmm.
to be able to take the risk, so you can minimize the risk, is what I would say, by doing those actions, like step by step, like exploring and investigating and getting clarity on the way. So it's a very good way to do it, and showing to people that there are steps, and at some
Oh,
stage, yes, you
there are
need to.
definitely steps. There are definitely steps. And I think, the other thing I wanted to mention was that not everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. So if you are not happy with your job, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something on your own, because doing something on your own takes a certain mindset and it has its ups and downs as well. uh, I knew that what I wanted was something that I wanted to do on my own. I've always been a loner in a lot of ways. But I think the important thing to know is when you feel stuck, or when you're in a situation that seems almost too much to bear, it's important to be able to find a way to step back from that and observe and get some and become more aware of why that is, and what perhaps you could do to improve it. And finding something new is certainly an option, but that's not always the option. That's I think that's something that we also want to say, because we do. I mean, I don't want to. The people that I work with, also some of my clients, they don't want to necessarily change their jobs. They're happy with their careers, but it's more about, what is the meaning of this? Is it just working for a salary and then spending that money? And then, I don't like Monday to Friday and I wait for the weekends. Is that it? Or is there something more to life? So I think that's the more important question, is to figure out, what am I doing? And is it for a higher purpose than just, my well-being and my family's well-being?
Yeah, it's all right. It's not made for everyone to,
Mm.
just quit and try to be on your own and businesses. But it's the question to get on clarity on this journey of clarity. I think it's most people should do that.
Mhm.
The one who actually feel unsatisfied or feel like something is missing in their life. It's a journey that it's offered to you to look for clarity, to look for meanings, to look for understanding who you are and what does resonate with you. And you mentioned earlier that, it's not about, we don't know how long we live, and health can be an issue. At what stage in your life, or maybe in the last few years, you decided to prioritize your health as well?
Well, I this has been since 2 years. I mean, I've always kind of prioritized my health, but 2 years ago, I had a blood test where I was almost pre-diabetic, and I love sweets, I love ice creams, I love milkshakes. So suddenly, I realized that if I become diabetic, there's no going back from that. And the moment that happens, then your life is forced to change. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna, I'm, that made me more aware. And as you get older, you see people around you, you become more aware of, problems they have. A lot of people are getting heart attacks earlier and earlier now because of just simply unhealthy lifestyles in their 20s and 30s. And you realize more and more that, you know, it's great when you're healthy, but no amount of money can solve a health issue or improve your quality of life when you have that health issue. So if you fall sick, if you have diabetes, if you develop some kind of other illness, chronic illness that you can't get rid of, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you have $100 in the bank or 100 million in the bank. Your life is not going to be so great. It's not going to be the same, and so money can't buy that. So it's just so that's again about developing awareness. So either you are healthy throughout or something pushes you. So in my case, it was this blood report that pushed me um, into becoming more aware and taking action uh, on what I eat, how I eat, when I consume.
And what did you do exactly for some people who are maybe in the same path with a bad blood result? And what was the first step? Like, because
Oh, so
maybe.
the first step was just to cut out the amount of sugar I have. So the first step was I cut out uh, eating or drinking anything that had added sugar for at least 2 months. So I really reduced. So I really, I thought of it as poison. And I said, okay, whatever, if I have carbs, that's fine, but I'm not going to add some syrups. I'm not going to have chocolate. I'm not going to have desserts for 2 months. So I went cold turkey on that for 2 months. And now, okay, I've gotten back to that, but very little, having it in very little quantity. So, Starbucks coffees, for example, if you get a Frappuccino, that stuff is piled with sugar. So before I used to have, 2, 3 a week. Now I have once a month. So the idea is to really cut back. And also, when you cut back on sugar, and there are many people who talk about this on the web, and many doctors as well. Sugar actually it's like a drug in a sense. We don't realize it, but there's so much in processed foods. Anything that is packaged probably has a lot of sugar, has more sugar than it needs. So the idea is then from the sugar consciousness to kind of be really conscious and aware of how you eat and what you eat in general. Uh, but but I think if you want to start that, then start by cutting down processed foods, and I mean sugar and processed foods, I would say. And I think there are any number of videos, there are any number of self-help guides and people who talk about this stuff. You just have to search it on YouTube. And there are many techniques that you can use. But for me, what worked was just cutting it out completely for 2 months, observing the effects and the changes that I felt as a result of cutting that out. And I felt lighter, I lost weight.
Mm.
And then when you want to start having it back again, at least you're conscious. So when I have a dessert, I have like 1 spoon of that dessert instead of the whole dessert.
Wow, you
Mm.
really change your habits. We're
You have
talking
to.
about financial habits and health habits. And did you also detox your mind? We are all sometimes very polluted inside our head. Do you have also new habits in your life now to more maybe on a spiritual journey or mindfulness?
Well, it's a question of energy, right? I mean, imagine you're a car and you have a full tank of gas. So either you can go straight towards your destination, or you can keep taking side roads and keep getting distracted. Yeah. Now, in this sense, uh, if you if you don't sort of if you're not aware of what you consume, everything you consume also has an impact on you. So if you're watching stuff that is uh, that creates tensions, that creates debates, it's not pleasurable to you. After a point, your mind is also kind of in that all very in a very sort of stressed out, not stressed out, but excitable. It's very excited. But for creative thinking, for intuitive work, when you need to get in touch with the intuition and have all that energy, your mind needs to be calm. The idea is to get your mind calm. So what can you do in terms of the food you eat, in terms of the movies that you watch, in terms of the music that you listen to, that will calm your mind? That's the idea. It's not to excite this, but it's to calm it, so you can uh, you can think better. You can be just more efficient. Otherwise, you're just burning up energy. So what I do, or rather what I've done, is I've really cut down. I mean, I've gotten off Instagram, I've gotten off Facebook. You don't have to get off, but you should seriously limit your consumption, because that is just a dopamine release at the end of the day, and it's completely mindless. It's fun, maybe 5 minutes a day, but that's it. So I got off social media for the most part. I started really limiting my social media to topics that are of interest to me. So transformation, growth, spirituality, and maybe one or two political events that keep happening. But you know, during days when I really need to focus, I just cut out even the news. I don't even look at the news because it doesn't really matter what's going on in the world. The world will still be there, 2 days later or 3 days later. So I find that when I really need to work, I cut out everything that's extraneous to that, and I make sure that I keep at least that I listen to at least one or two things every day that are inspirational, so that lift me up, that talk of something higher. How can you be your best self? I think it's good to listen to something inspirational at least once a day, because that helps tune your mind on that path. And the second thing that really helps me is music. So whether it's a Chopin waltz or it's a Beethoven symphony or it's a Mozart horn concerto, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain this, but when I have a headache, sometimes, when you have a headache on the left side of your head, quite often it's due to tension or stress. But when I listen to some really good music, my headache goes away. So it has a physiological effect and not just a psychological effect. So for me, those are the two things that I do: listen to something inspirational and listen to some good music.
Yeah, I think very good advice, because it's so easy to get caught up in the news, and the news are usually 99% of the time bad news, or
Mm.
showing us what doesn't work. But we have the choices, as you mentioned, to get out of social media, or to limit our time there, or even turn off TV and all of that, and to choose more inspirational channels, videos, and things that lift up
Yeah, lift us up.
ourselves.
No, no, and the other
Yeah.
thing that I failed to mention was kind of being close to nature.
Mm,
So whether it's going for a walk, sitting in a park, walking on the grass, being near trees, um, and away from your tech, your devices, and your music. If you can be in nature, if you just go and sit for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, go for a walk in the park, uh, that I find really helps center me and calm my mind.
yeah. And I think this is accessible to everyone. Whatever you
Mhm.
have, a 9 to 5 job, a very busy life, you can always decide to go outside, find the next tree or park, and just have a deep breath in and out for 5 minutes, and re resetting ourselves from inside out. And it's how I believe that the we can impact the world even
Yeah.
faster, and all of that, if all of us are feeling peace inside. And this, um one of the last question, based on your experience of living abroad,
Hmm.
it may feel lonely with the distance with the family and all of that. What is your feeling about living abroad? I think it's a choice for you, and but what has been maybe some of the difficulties you have been facing by living in a foreign country?
I think this really depends on everyone's individual situation. So when I lived in the US, when I lived in France, I had family everywhere, actually. So what was nice was that I was able to get close to that family, because had I lived in India or had I lived away, I would really hadn't developed those relationships with them. So when I was studying in the US for university, I kept meeting my cousins, even though we didn't live in the same city. When I was in Paris, I had some really close friends and some family who I kept meeting. But I think uh, what was I was also very fortunate to be able to go back to India and meet my mom and spend some time with her, and also keep up with my cousins back home. So what I feel, however, is that family is super important. At least, uh, I mean, in my case, it is, and I think in most cases, family is important because there at least you have, for the most part, unconditional love, which you will not always have with friends. But at the same time, if you can find some friends who are like family, that also really helps. But it's important to keep up with your family, I think, wherever you are, and not to forget them, because that's where you come from, and they're the people, who took care of you. As I see around me, as you grow up and you see people struggling to raise kids, it's not easy. It's a sacrifice also, on in one sense. Then you kind of appreciate how much time your parents spent bringing you up, giving you this education, or giving you this life and encouraging you. I think for most of us, our parents are always encouraging and supportive of what we do and how we do and how we live. So we should always be there for them as much as we can. I think it's important to know that.
Yeah, and it's possible to live abroad and make those things. For you, you have family in those countries, but I truly believe that it's a decision as well when you live abroad. And I'm
Mm.
speaking for myself that I also committed to myself to be more present at home with them
Mm.
as much as I can. So even though I live at the other side of the world, I'm coming back often. So it's really not possible to keep maintaining those even deeper connection with your family when you are living abroad.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you can have not great relationships with your family when you're living with them, and you can have better relationships with them with them if you're living abroad. So it's just about, as you say, how present you are in conversations. It's not just about being there physically, but even when you speak to your family and even your friends back home, how present are you during those conversations, and how often do you keep it up? And that takes work, like everything, like your business, like anything that is meaningful, it takes work.
Of course. And the presence is exactly this. It's not
Mm.
about the quantity, it's about of the quality of the moment when you are there. And I guess it's the same when if you are a dad or a mom and then you are at home and you have the kids around but you are on your phone, you are not present.
Mm.
And if
Mm.
you are maybe just 1 hour per day with them but fully there, fully committed, it can be with your children or with your parents or sisters, siblings, um, the, the relationships is going to shift, and we have the power in all of us to really create healthier
Mm.
relationship with our family. But was at one stage your family also telling you that, oh, maybe you shouldn't leave your job? Did
No, no,
they?
of course. I think that is standard reaction from anyone. It's normal, because they haven't, everyone acts, if they are not entrepreneurs, and my family's not a family of entrepreneurs, then of course, they think of, they obviously care about me when they say, don't just leave, make sure you have a backup, make sure you have a plan. So that's normal. But then if you ultimately, it is your life, ultimately you have to walk your own path, you have to make your own mistakes, and you have to learn from your own mistakes. So, but if you are able to, tell it to them with love and compassion, and understand where they're coming from, and just reassure them that, hey, you're not doing this on an impulse, you're doing this for a very good reason, and you've planned it out to some extent at least. I think then that'll just reassure them, because of course they care about you and they only want your happiness, and they don't want to see you making mistakes. But so it's just about being aware of that, and explaining the transition to them in a very nice way, in a compassionate manner.
Yeah, I think it's you are right on the spot that they care about you. And
Mm.
this is what everyone has to remember is when someone is trying to protect you, it is not they have their own fears. They don't know what is being an entrepreneur. And of course they want you to be safe and to keep you in good shape. And they may tell you, don't do it. And then but you need to explain that it's not coming from an impulse and it's really uh, something you have been, thinking
Mm.
about and
Mm.
building and all of that. So it's a very good advice. Thank you so much, Madhav. Before we do the last rapid five question,
Mhm.
do you want to add something, a message you would love to share? Um,
I think just like I said, the most important thing for me, most important takeaway over these past 2 years has been to work on this vision of your life. Yeah. What is the problem you want to solve? Who do you want to solve it for? Uh, how will you earn? How much money do you need? That's a very important part. And where will you find growth, or how will you grow in this life? I think those four questions are you are questions that you cannot answer immediately, that need a lot of reflection. But I think the sooner you start reflecting on those, the clearer your vision of what needs to be done or what you need to do will come into place.
Amazing. So now I'm going to ask you 5 questions
Okay.
and you answer in a very short answer. So, what is one thing you would love for your life right now?
Um, to be less stressed out, as I mean, to be fearless.
Okay. One thing you would love for the world.
I would love everyone to see commonalities rather than differences.
Oh, beautiful. Um, what is the worst advice you have received?
Uh, the worst advice, I don't I don't think I received any really bad advice, so I can't say.
And what is the best advice you have received?
Uh, the best advice is really this uh, to really know yourself first in order to figure out what decisions you need to take.
Mm. And the last question, if you had a magic wand, what would you love to transform?
Uh, hmm. Let me just think about that for a sec. If I had a magic wand, what would I like to transform? Um, I'd probably like to transform all the lines at airports, because I hate waiting in line, especially at airports, because when you're traveling, it's already stressful. So I'd love to find a system where we all go and we spend as little time as possible waiting in lines, because we all want to travel and meet friends and meet family. So that's probably what I would transform.
I will vote for that. Thank you so much, Madam. I think we learned so much today how it's possible to transform your life and to go to the next chapter without losing everything, without going on an impulse, but really on making a profound decision of
Hmm.
exploring who you are, what you would love, what is the vision you can get for your life. So thank you so much, Madam, and thank you for supporting others to transform their life and creating the lives that they would love and imagine.
Thanks, Lucy, for having me on the channel.
Thank you.